Hi, I'm Mike Papantonio, and this is America's Lawyer. A whistleblower at Twitter has revealed some startling security problems at the social media network, and these revelations could kill Twitter's lawsuit against Musk. We'll explain the details. And Hunter Biden's story is all over the news following recent revelations from Mark Zuckerberg. We'll explain the real story behind the story. And Nancy Pelosi's office has killed a measure to expand Social Security after promising lawmakers and activists that she would move forward. All that and more when we come back. Don't go anywhere. America's Lawyer starts right now. A former executive is blowing the whistle on how bad security is at Twitter, among other problems. Ring of Fire's Farron Cousins joins me to talk about what's happening. Farron, I say it all the time, I don't know anybody in the progressive news business better than you. You have followed this story from the very beginning. It's unfolding to be like a Greek tragedy. It's so crazy. Right. So now all this new information about cover-up. There's no question. It's on the edge of fraud. You can at least suggest that it looks like fraud. Started out where Musk says, well, yeah, I'll take whatever you got. If you've got bots in there, I understand that. But then the whistleblower comes back and says, it's a lot worse than what they were telling you.
Yeah, there's really two major avenues of what this whistleblower has revealed. The first, which we touched on last week, of course, was the fact that there is basically no security at Twitter. Your account is not secure. Barack Obama's account has been hacked. Joe Biden's account has been hacked. You're not safe on Twitter is what this whistleblower is telling us. But then the other part, the one that has real legal ramifications here, is that this outlet, Twitter, is still lying about how many bots and spam accounts are all over this website, which of course directly impacts and bolsters Elon Musk's case that he shouldn't have to buy it.
Do you remember, I don't know if you remember this conversation, when this first came up, both you and I said, be really careful what you ask for, Twitter. Because when you sue Musk, that means he gets to look at all of your dirty laundry. Yeah. He gets to take all the depositions he wants. He gets to get into your computer and see what's real and what's not. That is exactly what's playing itself out now. In this whistleblower that comes forward, Zatko. His name is Zatko. And I mean, he was at the top of the food chain, man. This guy was the guy, he was in charge of security issues. And he says that he was fired because he went to management and he told them, you have a problem that actually is so serious that it involves national security. Yeah. You have, and obviously, they were able to get into Obama's account. They were able to get into to Biden's account. Lord knows how long this has been going on. This is a big problem for Twitter. I don't know how you run away from this one.
Right, and legally speaking, Twitter had signed, documents. Was it with the FTC back in 2011 saying we will clean up all of our security problems? Because even 11 years ago, these problems were happening, and they said, okay, we understand it, we acknowledge it, we legally promise to do something with it, and they didn't.
Here's where it goes. It's the first time you and I talked about it, we said, be careful what you ask for, Twitter. When you go suing Elon Musk, it's going to get real ugly. Let me tell you the next thing that's going to happen. You have 300 million people who potentially have been at risk. Now, we know these tech companies have had to pay big billions of dollars for taking that material and not protecting it. Same thing is unfolding here. I'm just waiting for the other shoe to drop against Twitter where somebody says, hey, this is a class action.
It is. I mean, we've seen it with, Equifax. We've seen it with Yahoo. We've seen it with Facebook. It's eventually going to come to Twitter as well. And I think everybody needs to understand, too, you and I were not in favor of Musk buying Twitter. We did not want another oligarch buying up this media outlet. But it is funny to see this unfold. And now Twitter, Elon Musk looked like the bad guy to begin with. And now we found out, oh, God, it's actually Twitter that was trying to pull a fast one over on Musk. And they're going to pay the price for it. And they're not going to get their $44 billion out of Musk at all.
That ain't not going to happen. Actually, you might see a reverse lawsuit here. You could see something. He could turn this on its head. he could be say the guy, I'm the one that exposed Twitter, 300 million people, to the type of thing that's going on here. Now, the whistleblower says that they did this. They ignored the spam. They ignored the bots. They ignored the numbers because it increased profits. And he could name people where it increased their bonuses. The volume increased the bonuses of leadership there. This case, it's going to get uglier. It's going to get uglier for Twitter than it does Elon Musk.
And you also have the potential of defrauding investors,
right?
Because lying about the number of bots would give you more money from advertisers. So you're defrauding your advertisers.
Stockholders' derivative suit. Stockholders' derivative suit.
There's a lot of liability here for
Twitter.
Yeah,
and I think it's going to get worse. Sometimes you just got to move on. Twitter made the mistake saying, I'm going to get this $42 billion. It's going to go south on them. Mark Zuckerberg admitted recently that Facebook throttled the Hunter Biden lapse story ahead of the 2020 election. He says, we throttled it back. He says that actually, he didn't really say that in the interview. You and I talked about this.
Yeah.
If you look at the Rogan interview, I think they've taken, and I agree with what you and I had talked about earlier, it's almost like they're adding some words to this whole thing, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. And there's a lot that's real with this story. There's a lot that's unreal. First and foremost, let's talk about the big thing. He goes on Joe Rogan, and Zuckerberg clearly says, and we actually do have the clip. Mm-hmm. So Zuckerberg says, I think the FBI may have reached out to some people. There's so many vague words in there. And then, of course, Rogan asked point blank, did they tell you to censor the Hunter Biden story? And he said point blank, no. No, they didn't. But they still did make the decision to throttle that particular story. He admits that freely.
They didn't kill it. They throttled it back. They said, look, we got, there's an edge of a warning here. Somebody is saying that the Russians are coming again, and the Russians are going to put all this propaganda out there. Now, here's what's developing to me. I don't know whether you're following this. I think we talked about it earlier. This Timothy Thibault. Now, I think this is a big part of the story. The Hill reported that he was the guy that was in charge of the Hunter Biden investigation. And he was the guy that made the decisions. Do we go forward? Do we do this? Do we follow the investigation? What do we do? He was escorted out of the FBI building a couple of weeks ago. Okay, now he had been on suspension before then for investigating him to say, did you really do what the media is saying, some media is saying that you did, that you interfered with social media so you could cover up the Hunter Biden story? What is your take?
You had Republican Senator Chuck Grassley is basically the one who lobbed all these allegations against Thibault, and they did investigate, suspended while investigating. Not suspended, I guess, because there was definite wrongdoing, but saying, because you're being investigated for these allegations, we need you to step aside. And then, of course, he quits, retires, differing stories everywhere about why he actually left. Mm-hmm. But okay, so he's gone now. This guy who was running it, he obviously didn't kill the investigation because it was still happening, but I guess the question is, was there damage done? Did you intentionally sabotage anything? Which is a legit question.
Take the election out of it, okay? Yeah. Take the Trump election and Hunter Biden, and people say, well, if we'd have known the story, we wouldn't have voted for Biden. First of all, I don't think any of this ties up directly to Biden.
Right.
You and I talked about this. You pointed out that most of this took 2017, 2018.
Right, from August 2017 to October of 2018 is when these deals happened.
So let's assume that Hunter Biden is the dirtbag that he is. He is a total, utter dirtbag. No question about it. But how does that tie up to the president? And I don't think nobody's come forward and said, yeah, this is where it's very clear. What the big problem here is the FBI. The FBI has been so tarnished. I mean, not just from this, but for 4 or 5 stories before this, they've been tarnished. I don't think they're going to be tarnished by the raid that took place down at Mar-a-Lago. I just don't think that's going to be a problem for them. But right now, they know that they are having to fight this image problem. People are saying this is starting to look like J. Edgar Hoover's FBI. That's when the Republicans were in charge of saying to the FBI, go investigate this person, go after this person's tax issues, go invest. The Republicans were driving the train. The FBI was politically a machine for the GOP. Now the question is, has the FBI become a machine for the Democrats? To me, it kills the FBI if this comes out, if this continues to unfold the way it seems to be unfolding. What's your take?
Which could be why Thibault, retired. Maybe it wasn't a voluntary decision. Maybe it was, you need to get out of here. We've got to maintain this reputation. We've got to make sure everything is on the level. We clearly have a lot of other things going on as well. And if there is any kind of blemish on this investigation, it's going to put blemishes on everything else we're doing. So maybe they forced him out. Again, we don't know. We're not inside there. But for him to abruptly say, okay, I'm officially retiring right now, you're handling this massive investigation, it's bad optics to say the least.
Yeah, it's bad optics. And you know what happened when the GOP was involved with J. Edgar Hoover, and Hoover was a weapon. That's all he was. He was a little weapon that they would send out against their political foes. Now, the Democrats moved during the church hearings and all that process. They moved to start cutting back the funds of the FBI. I predict the same thing's going to happen here. There's already cries, defund the FBI. I don't believe that's going to happen, but I think they're going to have a hard time getting big funding.
Well, and I do think when we talk about this Hunter Biden story, because, you mentioned the guy being a scumbag, and that's based on all the photos and everything we have seen off the laptop. But when it comes right down to actual criminal activity here, we're still lacking a lot of evidence. He did some weird things in those pictures, 100%. But right now, you've looked at it, I've looked at it. We're struggling to put anything that looks unethical, yes. Criminal, not seeing it yet.
It's the appearance, what they would say, the appearance of impropriety. But I mean, the guy is a dirtbag. But he's a dirtbag that I don't believe at this point has committed any criminal offense that ties back to his dad.
Yeah.
And that's the importance of the story. I mean, I don't care. Right. The guy's a dirtbag. There are plenty of dirtbags around.
How do you guys handle things when they're a big news item that's controversial? Like there was a lot of attention on Twitter during the election because of the Hunter Biden laptop story. The New York Post.
Yeah, we have that too.
Yeah, so you guys censored that as well?
So we took a different path than Twitter. Basically the background here is the FBI, I think, basically came to us, some folks on our team, and was like, hey, just so you know, like you should be on high alert. We thought that there was a lot of Russian propaganda in the 2016 election. We have it on notice that basically there's about to be some kind of dump of that's similar to that. So just be vigilant. So our protocol is different from Twitter's. What Twitter did is they said you can't share this at all. We didn't do that. What we do is we have. If something is reported to us as potentially misinformation, important misinformation, we also have this third-party fact-checking program because we don't want to be deciding what's true and false. And for I think it was 5 or 7 days when it was basically being determined whether it was false, the distribution on Facebook was decreased, but people were still allowed to share it. So you could still share it, you could still consume it.
So when you say the distribution is decreased,
it got shared.
How does that work?
It basically, the ranking in newsfeed was a little bit less. So fewer people saw it than would have otherwise. So it definitely.
By what percentage?
I don't know off the top of my head, but it's meaningful. But basically, a lot of people were still able to share it. We got a lot of complaints that was the case. Obviously this is a hyper-political issue, so depending on what side of the political spectrum, you either think we didn't censor it enough or censored it way too much. But we weren't sort of as black and white about it as Twitter. We just kind of thought, hey, look, if the FBI, which I still view as a legitimate institution in this country, it's like very professional law enforcement, if they come to us and tell us that we need to be on guard about something, then I want to take that seriously.
Did they specifically say you need to be on guard about that story?
No, I don't remember if it was that specifically, but it basically fit the pattern.
Nancy Pelosi has killed a measure to expand Social Security so she can give tax breaks to the rich. Wow, I don't get this story. I mean, before I even launch into it, tell me Why in the world would Nancy Pelosi, with almost unanimous support of this, and Nancy Pelosi says no? One reason is this guy right here. Why don't you talk about him?
Yeah. This little toad-looking character here, Wendell. Forget his name, but anyway.
Wendell, let's call him
Yeah,
Wendell.
you got Wendell, who has been one of Pelosi's top advisors. He has been with her for many, many years now. And he always gives her very right-wing, horrible advice, as in, don't go with these popular progressive measures.
Yeah.
Instead, why don't we do something that might lower some taxes for people like you, Nancy Pelosi, who's worth no less than $114 million.
Billion. Oh, millions, excuse me.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
So, and by the way, that's the number from 4 years ago, so it's likely higher. But he is the guy that is helping pull these strings. And this measure we're talking about, which would have increased Social Security payments by 2%.
Yeah.
2%.
Yeah.
200 Democratic co-sponsors of the legislation. She promised them,
was great.
I'm sending it to committee, we're going to get this done.
It was great for the Democrats, man.
Right, and then as soon as they say, okay,
his name is Wendell Primus.
Primus.
And he is a toad. He's a bureaucratic toad that is way right-wing, that every time something comes up that might cause any controversy, his argument is, Nancy, if we go and mess with this, somebody's going to come mess with you. They're going to say you've done something wrong. That's the nature of politics. I mean, that's just what happens with politics. But you're right, it's a 2% difference going to people who retire basically because Social Security allows them to retire. But it's not just about the elderly who have to cut medicine in half so they can, they're living on Social Security. Can I buy food with that? Do I have to buy medicine with it? Do I cut my pill in half? It's about children too. People miss that, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the part of Social Security everybody forgets about. If you have a parent death, anything like that, the children can receive Social Security, I believe, up until they're about 18 years old, to help with the costs of that if they have to go live with somebody else. And again, a 2% increase, but instead what Pelosi decided to go with was this so-called bipartisan legislation that actually expands eligibility for Social Security, which everybody, that sounds good, right?
No, it's
but
not.
no, because it's not paid for, so it ends up reducing benefits.
That's right. That's exactly right. And the problem is the people at the top that don't, they don't need Social Security to retire. But you got more than a quarter of Americans that rely on the income. 90%. That's 90% of their income.
Yeah.
In other words, if they don't have that, they have nothing. And Pelosi had the opportunity to take a shot here, certainly at the midterms, and say, "Look what we've done for you."
But this guy told her not to do it because it would slightly raise taxes on people making more than $400,000 a year.
The Primus toad, let's call him that. The popular weed killer Roundup has now been linked to convulsions in animals, and we know the harm it's doing to humans. That's already been established. It's killing human beings. But now it's killing your dogs and your cats, anything you keep out in the yard. Talk about his story a little bit.
Yeah, this is very disturbing, obviously, because what they've started to notice scientists have is all of the earthworms in these areas where Roundup is being sprayed, by the barrel. All these earthworms are suffering convulsions because what it does is it exacerbated convulsions in C. elegans and concluded that a receptor protein called GABA-A was the neurological target. So it gets into the neurological system and causes convulsions. And these same receptors, they're not just in earthworms, they're in human beings too.
You know what's really ugly about it? Is the company's known this for 40 years. The early rat studies that were done showed exactly the mechanism that we're talking about here. It showed they had rat studies. It caused convulsions, it caused death, it caused cancer in rats. They phonied up the studies. They completely phonied them up. They got them to the EPA. The EPA saw that the company had phonied up the studies and allowed it to happen anyway because they said if we don't have Roundup, the world is going to run out of food. Do you remember that pitch?
Yeah.
If we don't have Roundup, the world is going to run out of food.
You know, people also got to understand, you've been through these documents. You're not basing this on what you think. You've seen the documents. You've done the lawsuits here. Like, you know more about this than probably anybody else. And it's so much worse than even what these stories tell, because it's not just the cover-up. It's the massive cover-up. And right now, even Bayer is saying, because Bayer owns Monsanto that had Roundup, they say, well, that's just worms. This isn't in mammals. Who cares about worms?
Farron, the other argument in the documents when I was taking depositions, the argument was it's only rats, it's only beagles. We can't extrapolate that to human beings. Well, in order to be able to say that, they had to commit fraud. Yeah. So the Supreme Court, United States Supreme Court, looked at this and said, can we go forward with this case? When the Supreme Court says yes, this conservative Supreme Court, these folks have done some bad things. Social media sites recently shut down a number of pro-America fake news accounts. That's a crazy, attacking Russia and China. Okay, I guess I love this story because the irony is just so thick. The irony is that the U.S. government created fake news media. They'd make a name for something that didn't exist. This is the American media or Johnson media. They would then, with AI, artificial intelligence, create a reporter that would make up the story. And the story was attacking China and attacking Russia through propaganda.
Right, and they were, posting it in Chinese. They were posting it in Russia. They even did it in Iran. And what they did, they didn't just create the fake name, they created fake people to share it on social media. So what they did was they went through Russian dating sites online, they went through Chinese dating sites, they pulled pictures of people that they thought, this is a very attractive person. We put them, this is now our writer and our sharer online, totally fake, but because people saw, oh, well, it's a pretty face, I like what this story is saying. And that's how the propaganda works. And this is exactly, of course, what not we said, but everybody said, well, that's what Russia did in 2016. We've been doing it over there since 2012, this report says.
Well, actually, the report says that. This has been coming up for a long time.
Right.
This has been coming up for a very long time. We are the masters of propaganda. And so, but when we now, what I love about the story is it's a good sign that social media, that the tech industry says, hey, we're going to do the same thing to the U.S. government when they do bad. I love that part of this because it surprised me. The tech industry is so beholden to the government. Yeah. And when the tech industry says, no, this is so bad, where you've created it's not a fake news issue, it's a fake source issue. They're making up newspapers, they're making up TV stations, they're making up reporters, they're taking celebrities and then taking AI, messing with their face and making them look like they're a real reporter, and then sending that all over China and Russia.
And what they did, and I got to tell you, from a propaganda standpoint, it's actually kind of genius.
It is.
So they would take articles like from the BBC or actual reputable news sites. Yeah. They copy the entire article and they put it in a new document. They change a couple things to be more propaganda-ish in there, and then they post it as their own. So if somebody were to take a snippet of that article and search for it to verify it, they're going to see it also pop up on BBC and these other sites and think it's legitimate, not noticing the subtle changes in them.
Farron, didn't you do an article one time? I'm reaching here. I may have this wrong. But didn't you do an article one time where we found out the Obama administration had put in place the propaganda arm of the government?
Yeah.
Is that my imagination?
Right, they did. That was with one of the military defense authorizations of, it may have been 2015 or 2016.
Yeah, okay, so what he did is to say, let's make it official.
Yeah.
We have a propaganda department, and that's what this is. But the irony is when we say, oh my God, Russia's changing or China's changing our lives with propaganda, and we know this now? I mean, come on, man. The Federal Reserve might plunge us into a recession just to ease inflation. It's a move that's going to devastate the American working class. I don't know why. Can I tell you something? This is the kind of story that nobody pays attention to. When we post this on our site, there's going to be this much traffic compared to, like we say all the time, let's do a story on I hate the GOP. There's no comparison. This is a vitally important story. This, you know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of Greenspan, who just completely ignored what was going on with the housing market and was trying to solve the inflation. Well, you pick it up from here.
Yeah, what we've got now is we got Fed Reserve Chair Jerome Powell, who warned us explicitly. He said, listen, the pain is coming. There's got to be some suffering here for working class families.
He said this at Jackson Hole just a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
The American family is going to suffer from what I do.
Yeah, but don't worry. Well, I mean, a lot of you are going to lose your jobs because we're raising interest rates, but it's going to bring inflation down maybe a little, probably. But the only thing definite from this, as he points out, is the suffering. Suffering is definitely going to happen. And you've got Larry Summers that's been pushing this same thing for 3 months, who is from the Obama administration. But that's all they know how to do is, well, I guess when things are rough, let's punish the working class.
Okay, and the way they punish them is they keep increasing interest rates at such a high margin that it causes unemployment. It's not only that you can't buy a house. It's not that you can't buy a car. It is that it causes unemployment because the corporation that's having to pay those rates, they can't hire enough people.
Yeah, they can't borrow as much money anymore, so they have less operating capital. When they lay people off, then those people have less money. That's the trickle down. That's the real trickle down economics, is that there's less money flowing around, and those at the lower end of that totem pole, they're the first ones to feel that pain.
We saw it with Volcker in the 70s and the 80s. We saw it with Greenspan. Now we're seeing it with this cat. And really the problem is that he's doing this when we have a falling GDP, a year of falling GDP, doing it while we have a falling disposable income for Americans. We have a falling real wages because those real wages are being eaten up by inflation. And it's just exactly like Volcker and Greenspan did. And it's like he never took a look at the book. He never looked at the history book. It's the same thing happening. Now, even though people, they won't read this story, they won't watch the story, they'll only say, well, God, I wonder why I can't get a job. Wonder why I can't buy a house. Wonder why I can't buy a car.
Well, and you know, to make it worse too, this is exactly what they've done, like you've said in the past. They're creating a recession to hurt people, but we're also not addressing the real big cause of inflation,
Good point.
which is the corporate greed that you and I have stood here and talked about half a dozen times in the last 3 months. These ridiculous markups from corporations just because they can. If you don't address that, you're not fixing anything.
Yeah, you hit a really good point here, Farron, and I don't think we ought to leave the story without talking about it. First of all, your argument is that the real problem is too much corporate power and too much corporate influence. Add to that, we got a supply chain disaster.
Yeah.
Maybe Buttigieg someday will explain what the hell happened here, but it's a disaster. We've got a war in Ukraine. You have all those things converging, but the most important thing is that we've given corporations too much power over what the Fed does. Yeah. That's what happened the last burn down on the mortgage. The corporation had too much power. And it's a simple analysis. It used to be that, for example, doctors used to own hospitals, right? And we didn't have the kind of problem we have with medical health inflation. Corporations came in, they bought out the doctor hospitals. You don't find doctor-run hospitals anymore. So it's corporations. This is the same thing here. The corporations have so much power over what the Fed is doing that it's a train wreck.
Well, it really is. And also, just to go with that too, when you have these prices that corporations are already artificially inflating, 300%, 400%, when inflation finally does go down and people see those price tags drop, that 300% increase stays. That becomes the new base price. But it did drop because inflation went down and people become, I guess, normalized to paying $1,500 for a TV instead of $1,000.
It becomes a new normal.
Right.
Yeah, okay. Gas, well, we've never paid $5, but we might have to get used to it or whatever it is.
Exactly.
Rising energy costs have put 20 million Americans at risk of losing electricity because they can't pay their bills. Now, again, just like the story we just talked about, what's happening? Used to be that you would have small individual energy companies, you would have co-ops. Maybe you'd have a co-op that's run by a county or city, and everybody in that area would get their energy from that co-op. And then you had people like Xcel Energy, Next Era Energy. We know what thugs they are. And we know all these people, PG&E.
Yeah.
Those types of corporate control types came in and have bought the industry. So now you've got, 20 million households, 1 in 6 homes that are as much as $3,000 behind in their ability to pay their electricity, and they're simply being shut off.
You know, we have seen already this summer where you have had areas that have experienced these power outages due to grid failures, and people have died from heat stroke. We saw it this past winter. When the power grids went out, people lost their electricity and froze to death in their homes. And now we're creating a system where the energy grid doesn't have to fail because so many people are behind on their bills, they're going to lose electricity, that people will die from this. We see this up north every year for a couple of decades now. Elderly people, they couldn't pay their bills, so they let their gas bill expire, and they go without heat, and they die by freezing in their own home.
Well, right now you have the American public. They're maxed out on their credit cards. That's clear. Evidence shows that. They've depleted their savings just because of things like inflation. And their wage gains have really been erased because of inflation. But so in comes corporate America. Anytime you let corporate America in that door, whether it's the hospital corporation, name it, when you let corporations make decisions like this, it's going to end badly. And this is exactly what's happening here. You've got people that natural gas, for example, I think I saw a number where it's increased 40% just over this last year. So Europe is getting killed by it. America's getting ready to really feel it this winter.
And there's no shortage, by the way. Let's point that out with these artificial price inflations. We don't have a shortage of coal. We're still drilling that out of the ground at record pace. Fracking is taking place all over the country. We're getting more natural gas than we know what to do with, so much that they want to ship it overseas. We have enough energy. They're inflating these prices for the one simple reason, because they can.
Yeah. And as long as we let corporations continue, we've seen it. I mean, history has repeated itself 1,000 times. My God, the railroad industry, the fuel industry, you name it. We've seen it repeat itself. The banking industry, I could go on forever. Now they're even trying to overtake the legal industry. So unless somebody says, like a Bernie Sanders type says, look, let's go to the heart of the problem. You can dress this up any way that you want, but at the end of the day, it's corporations that are hammering the rights of the American consumer. That's what's happening. Farron, thank you. As usual, great material.
Thank you.
That's all for this week, but all of these segments are going to be available this coming week right here on this channel, and you can follow us on Twitter at America's Lawyer. I'm Mike Papantonio, and this has been America's Lawyer, where every week we tell you the stories that corporate media is afraid to tell you. They can't tell you because their advertisers won't let them, or their political connections are just so deep-rooted that their political connections don't allow for it. We'll see you next time.